Alright, let's try something here that could be a lot of fun and I'm gonna run down my top 5 lukewarm classic rock bands. This means my top 5 bands that it was really hard for me to connect with. Even though I heard them over and over and over, I had very little reaction to them, or I only came to appreciate them over time. This is not a list of bands that I think are bad. This is not a list of bands that I hate. I think all of these bands are great bands. They're legends, and deservedly so. But it took me a long time to connect with each and every one of them. And I'm going to start with number 5, Jethro Tull. For whatever reason, no matter how many times I heard this band, I felt nothing but aversion to them. Now, it's not what you might expect. It's not that I just can't stand the presence of the flute in the band. It had more to do with the guitar tone, the song arrangements, and Ian Anderson's vocal. But, as I said in the introduction here, I think that Jethro Tull is a very good band. It's just very hard for me to get oriented. Some of that also has to do with the way that their classic era albums were produced. They feel just a little bit muddled to me, and yeah, over time I developed an appreciation for this band, but it was very slow. And number 4 is Cream. Heard Cream over and over. They're legends: Eric Clapton, Ginger Baker, Bruce, and the basic dynamic of the trio is fascinating to me, but I always felt that their psychedelic side is really hard to follow and kind of not very interesting at all, and that they have this strange mashup of blues and soul and jazz that when it worked, it is really good, but when it didn't work, it just sounded like noise to me. But again, over time, particularly in terms of their blues interpretations, I came to appreciate Cream and Eric Clapton's playing and Jack Bruce much more than I did at first. So as I say, they're a great band, but it was difficult for me to warm up to. Number 3 is The Who. I never cared for the way that The Who approaches music in general. I'm not a fan of the histrionic crescendos. I'm not a fan of the self-abusive, reflective lyric style. I'm not a fan of Pete Townshend's guitar playing. I wasn't a fan of Roger Daltrey's vocals. And when I saw The Who live, I just thought that they didn't even appeal to me visually for whatever reason. I didn't care for the rock opera concepts that Pete Townsend put forward, although I gave them multiple listenings and tried to get into them. I didn't care for the movie Tommy. I didn't care for Quadrophenia. But when I heard Pete Townsend interpret some of the classic Who songs alone with an acoustic guitar, I started to get a greater feeling for the soul of the band and the essence of his songwriting. And I do think that there might be just a little bit of a disconnect between his original vision of his songs and the way that they're ultimately interpreted by The Who, which might have been something that was also obstructing my appreciation. So at number 2, I'm going to put The Doors. And I just have never understood the demented carnival sound that they have, that crazy organ sound going along with the frenetic drumming and spacey guitar. I don't understand why that particular sound was appealing to people. It's not particularly a surf sound, it's not a rock sound, it's kind of jazzy. And I'm also not a fan of Jim Morrison's improvisational spoken word lyrics. Again, over time of listening to them and letting it permeate into imagination, I could get closer to what I think they were trying to accomplish on a song. Riders on the Storm might be the first song that I warmed up to, and Break On Through was another one. And my number 1 band that I really had a hard time connecting with, that I feel is, a legendary status, is the Eagles. They are one of the most popular. I think they have the best-selling album in history of their greatest hits album, and I think they might have another one in the top 5. Thing is, they're a massively popular band, legendary status, and have so many singles, and they cover a gamut from more harder rockers like Life in the Fast Lane or ballads like Take It to the Limit. And I mean, what can you say? The Eagles are as much a part of the musical landscape as the Rolling Stones or the Beatles or any of those kind of major legendary bands. I just never could connect with this band. I could never understand where they were coming from. I don't particularly care for Don Henley. I don't understand the atmosphere of brooding sadness that he seems to walk around in all the time. I don't understand his moralizing. I don't like his voice. I don't think he's a particularly interesting drummer. When he does do interesting things as a drummer, they seem to be based a lot on Ringo Starr and that minimalist approach, which is okay, but it's not something that leaps out to me. So Don Henley to me is kind of a negative when it comes to the Eagles, and I was never a real big fan of his solo work either. So the Glenn Frey side of the band is slightly more interesting to me, but he has this penchant for playing to the gallery, for writing lyrics and music and hooks that are there just to get the crowd to go along. Something about it just doesn't appeal to me. The Eagles to me always seemed like a brand that was struggling to find an identity as a band, but that's just me. And I don't deny that they're one of the most important bands and one of the most accomplished classic rock bands, and they have some great songs, but on the whole it took me a long time to warm up to them. And so there you go, those are my 5 hardest to warm up to classic rock bands, and I'd love to hear what you think of my list, but more importantly, I'd like to hear what your list is. So go ahead and feel free to leave a comment below, and remember to like and subscribe. Thanks a lot.